Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. Okay. So we are going to speak about software localization testing. And we are speaking specifically about localization testing. So all our questions will pertain to localization testing, not any other type of testing. And we will just want you to take this survey. So first you can go to that link on the IMUG page and click it, or you can go to the barcode. Hold on. And scan it to get to their survey. We just wanted to know what experience with testing the audience has.
They're looking at the results in real time. Everybody go on in there.
And here we go. Please vote. Have you ever done localization testing? Oh my. Okay, 5 people more.
Some people can't get the survey.
I guess those are waiting who are voting are from Moravia.
Oh, no, we've got a few extras.
Mm-hmm. The number is weird. Vote more. Go back to the slides.
Okay, dokie.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because we need to run the first one first. Okay. Do you need the link again? No?
You're getting a pretty good response.
Huh?
It's a pretty good response.
Yeah. Okay, everybody good? Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, 33 people yes and 10 no. Okay.
And one not sure.
If you replied yes, you can mention what kind of localization testing, linguistic or functional. Okay, the audience is very well prepared, even probably more than us. So
That's okay, we have our testers.
all right, we have our testers. Okay, so very good.
So, are we ready to move?
Okay, all right then. So we see that a lot of you have the background in testing and localization testing, and you did both linguistic and functional. So great, then let's start. I will pass the floor to Valeska.
Hi, my name is Valeska Van Fleet. I'm Director of Operations of the Monterey Testing and Language Center. And I want to start off before we launch into anything. I want to just start and underscore why testing is important. So I've got a couple of really horrifying examples. Think about AT&T in the 90s when they did a small update to their long-distance software that left customers without long-distance service for 9 hours. Not only a major customer snafu, bad PR, but it cost the company $60 million in revenue. That's about $6.6 million an hour. It's a pretty good business. Then there's the Mars climate orbiter that disintegrated in space because the software that they used to update the output from the thruster used the wrong units of measurement. Poof, that's an internationalization issue. But I think the most frightening is the one that occurred with the National Cancer Institute in Panama City, where doctors were using a therapy machine that provided doses of radiation therapy to cancer patients. It was a medical device that was manufactured by a company called Multidata Systems. A bug in the software allowed the machine to deliver twice the amount of radiation to cancer patients, which proved lethal for 21 patients and caused horrendous side effects for hundreds of others. So most of these issues, of course, would be caught in core testing, but we know that companies release products with bugs because it's impossible to get rid of all the bugs. And we know that in localization, a bug in the source happily proliferates across all the languages. So as testers, we consider ourselves the guardians of not just quality, but a product or a company's reputation, and the end users, not just the end user's experience, but in some cases, their safety. It's a daunting responsibility, and we have to be really good. So with localization testing, most of you know, we focus on the end user's experience. So we do both linguistic and functional. From a linguistic perspective, we're looking at how the language displays. Does it look right across all the platforms, on all the devices? Are there no typos? Are the diacritics all correct? From a functional perspective, we wanted to work consistently across all languages, on all platforms, in all browsers. So a good tester can manage both the linguistic end and the functional end. We want the end user to have as awesome an experience in the localized version of the product as a user who's using the product in the source language. So, why set up a testing center here? Well, like all great ideas, I think it starts with a vision. And I think our vision was to complement phenomenal off-site testing facilities and in-country language services by providing a service that was local for our customers and clients in the Pacific Time Coast, zone, and give them real-time solutions for language issues, and provide a testing center that they could come down, they could test, they could evaluate the testing facility, they could collaborate with the testers, train on software updates, bring the devices themselves or ship them down easily without having to go through customs or customs delays or those kinds of expenses. And really, it's like an hour down the road or a short flight north or south. So question then is, why Monterey? Well, sadly, it's not because I happen to live in Monterey. Monterey is arguably the language capital of the world. Now, if you doubt me on this, go check it with the Library of Congress, because we're registered. We truthfully have about 157 languages and cultures that are represented on the Monterey Peninsula, which is pretty remarkable. We also have 4 phenomenal institutions, the Middlebury Institute of International Studies, the Navy Postgraduate School, the Defense Language Institute, and CSUMB, all which generate unquestionably, particularly Miss, which generate young language professionals and localization professionals that are going to form our industry in the next 5, 10, and 20 years. So we have a phenomenal pool of natural talent to draw from. And of course, here's a typical test recruitment day in our office in Monterey, where we have a lot of the Miss students coming in. And we draw heavily from that pool. But clearly not all of this language talent are localization people. So the challenge becomes, how can we feed our needs and get language people ready to deliver services for our clients that we can trust and be comfortable with? Well, we train them. We recruited a lot, we trained them, and we have a very diverse group. Some are very young, some are retired, some have localization education, some are teachers. But the fact is that we began on the premise that we could cultivate an environment where people could learn how to test if we showed them. And we began in a very primitive way with just web pages that were drawn in English that I adulterated with all kinds of errors, and just tried to test their eyeballs to get them to see if they could find the mistakes, taught them what to look for. And then Olga took the program to the next level. She created exercises that were in both English and their target language. And they ran through these exercises for about a month. And we could see the curve, the bar of improve. And eventually they were testing at about a success rate of 95 to 98%. So we had the basis of a core team in about 24 languages. Then June took these testers and said, okay, now here are the tools that you need. And she taught them the basics of functional testing, and she taught them how to deliver results in Jira. So from that point on, we were ready to squash the bugs. And we became a bug-unfriendly center, but a dog-friendly center, at least a small dog-friendly center. Oops. So what kind of projects are we doing right now? Well, we are doing medical devices. So we are, and we do that with full documentation because, as I indicated, the medical device industry is highly regulated, and it needs to be. We also do home automation devices. We do websites. We do QA for the entertainment business. We do apps that tell you how to get a taxi anywhere. We do apps that are games that make you go look for little creatures in the park or in the Kremlin. We also do just basic language QA and DTP QA because, of course, not everybody who does DTP is a native speaker of the language that they're producing. So we make sure that the spacing is right, the hyphenation is right, and so on. But we're not going to talk about all of those. We're going to continue on the testing route, and I'm going to pass the floor over to Olga, and she's going to tell you how we squash the bugs.
Okay, I'm going to talk about testing per se, but since you are so prepared, I'll just give a brief introduction about what is a bug. A bug is a malfunction in the program or any incorrect results that the program outputs. And actually, this is a synonym of an issue, an error, and also in a wider sense, it's any incorrect behavior or any incorrect strings that the program outputs and that is reported against this software. And it's also an entry in a bug tracking system. So it's not only an error, but it's also a report of this error. And the term bug is often erroneously attributed to Grace Hopper, who's a famous woman in this country. She was released from her active duty in 1946 and joined the Harvard Computation Lab. And she worked on the Mark II and Mark III computers. And once her team traced the malfunction of the Mark II to a moth who was trapped in the relay. So they performed so-called debugging, which was extraction of the moth, and taped this moth carefully to the log, which was the bug tracking system, the first one. And then, this log still exists in the Museum of New York. Everyone can go and see that moth. And I will just, again, give a brief overview of localization testing workflow. Basically, we are talking about localization testing, which can be functional and linguistic. And what we have in Monterey, we have test labs with secure and access and secure Wi-Fi and everything very secure and confidential. I, for example, can't enter these labs because I'm not a tester who works there. And our testers test various devices in these labs. Each client has their own lab, and the testers work together in the same environment. They just we have clients who want us to do 5 languages at a time. Recently, there were clients who wanted us to do 24 languages at a time, the same lab. And basically, they test. They do testing in real time, and they communicate with each other, and they communicate to the project managers. And through project managers, they communicate to the client. And also, a very important part of the testing process is protocols, testing protocols. We will talk about it later. Yeah, and okay, sorry. Yeah, and no problem. And also, they log bugs to bug tracking system, and when a bug is logged, then developers or localization engineers on the client side, they fix this bug. So they categorize it, they fix it, and then the same testers perform the same test again just to make sure that the bug was fixed correctly. So this is a general overview, and let's just move to the to key parts of it. So a bug tracking system. Here you have, it's quite blurry, a screenshot from Jira, which is the most common bug tracking system. And bug filing is key because our testers, they speak various languages, but the idea is that they have to log this correctly for the developer on the client side to fix it. So the training on how to log bugs and on the best practices and on the rules is very important. And also it varies across clients because some clients use such bug tracking systems as Jira, or like there are a lot of other systems, but some use proprietary systems. Some use like non-proprietary, like Google Spreadsheet, for example. And it is really key to define the test metrics, because basically what parameters of a bug to log. And on this screenshot, so basically they indicate the project, the summary of this bug, then description, and they have to trace, they have to basically show the navigation to the developer, how to get to that particular point in the software. And also there are such parameters as severity, priority, which is very important, because let's say a developer doesn't speak this language and he doesn't understand if the issue is major or minor. So testers have to get training on that as well. Also, like some technical parameters, and finally screenshots, because any, like a picture is worth 1,000 words, and being visual is always very good. Then bug reporting guidelines include several general rules, but again, it is very specific to a particular client. However, in general, first, we have to make sure that this bug hasn't yet been reported. And this is why our testers work in the same room, because ideally, like in an ideal world, there shouldn't be any functional bugs. But however, it doesn't always happen that it's completely like bug-free in terms of functionality. So accidentally someone missed the bug during the code testing, and then it was transposed to 30 languages. So apparently we want to make one entry, but with comments that with corresponding comments that it was actually it is now in 30 builds, in 30 localization builds. And also we have to make sure that testers work with the most recent build, because there have been cases when the clients would just ship their software, for example, their devices. So they have those devices like in the lab waiting, and then nothing happens. 1 month passes, another month passes, and then suddenly the client upgrades their software. So the client really has to make sure that the testers work with the most recent build, because otherwise cost implications are very severe on the client. And also such things as mentioned, clear navigation to this point in the software, clear instructions about how to fix the bug, because developers who don't speak a language, they don't understand Tagalog, and they don't see what exactly they should change it to. So as I mentioned already, like screenshots are very important as well. Test plans, it's a very it's a key part of any testing process, because if let's say we have a device and we just give it to the tester and say test it, then what happens? They don't know the entire functionality that is incorporated. They don't know all the strings that are incorporated. So they would probably at best test 5%, 10%. So test plans, those are instructions, clear instructions, step by step, how to do testing. And those are prepared. They can be prepared by us, by the way, but we'll talk about it later. But mainly, like in most cases, the client has to prepare them, because they are based on the product specifications, and it's much easier for the client's developers to do it than for us. But we have started doing it also recently. So a typical test plan consists of an identification number of a step or of a file of a string. Then you have the actions that you have to complete. And then you have English text in this protocol. You have the target text, and ideally a screenshot. Basically, how it looks like. This is a 100-page document, and even if it's a very simple device, it still has a lot of pages of protocols, just because everything has to be documented first. And then, let's say step 1, and then take the device. Well, it doesn't say that. Plug the device, press start, then press the first button, and then basically what we have to have. So our testers basically test according to the protocols, and ideally, ideally in an ideal world, every client has their product that is very specific. So some pre-testing training is necessary just for the testers to familiarize themselves with the functionality and just with the device, so that they become familiar with it. Okay. All right, localization testing specifics. So there are all kinds of testing that go beyond localization. There is core testing, functionality testing, compatibility testing, compliance testing, whatever, stress testing, performance testing, internationalization testing, and so on. So we are talking about localization. And particularly for localization testing, several main features. First of all, so just statistically, the types of bugs that we have are mostly user interface bugs. We don't have that many functional bugs. And also, the testers have to sometimes check the local market features or functionality. And this is also one of the localization testing specifics. Then we have two types of testing, functional and linguistic. And in case of functional testing, actually anyone can do it. So you don't have to be a native speaker, though in some cases you have, because this is a kind of all mixed. And but in general, only for linguistic testing, the strict requirement is to have native speakers. So in Monterey, we have rare languages that are not always required. And those rare languages, they work with the core languages as functional testers. So if you have, for example, 10 languages to test, we have 20 testers, because 10 people do functional and 10 people do linguistic. Yeah, so basically this was all. And about that slide. And these are different reactions to a single word bug. So here you see the tester who found the bug, then the developer is not that happy, then the manager is not happy at all. It's from Facebook. But no. But in fact, so it's again an ideal world, because like imagine there is a test lab with many people inside and with hundreds of pages of protocols per language. So our tests only look like that at the very beginning, but at the very end, they are more like developers or managers, and depending on the type of personality. So some testers behave as developers, some as managers. But the thing is that they have to stay focused all the time. And you can imagine hundreds of pages and them going over them. So what happens is people just lose focus. And once you've lost focus, you can actually continue automatically do it, but you are not there anymore. So you can miss it. There's a high possibility to miss a bug. So this is a very hard work to remain focused all the time, like to interact nicely with each other, So stress management is a very important part of that, because testers have to spot that moment when they lose like everything, focus, patience, whatever, and like take a walk, take a break, go out together, and then go back, because it go back, yes, to the jail. So and basically continue working. So it's not easy at all. And one of parts of today's presentation is a quiz for you to see what types of, I mean, to see if you are good testers at all. Because it can seem very easy, but in fact it's not. Okay. So testing requires efficiency. Our testers are trained, and they do, they find bugs much faster than like a non-trained person. And they, because not only because an end user as well. Also, it requires effectiveness because they have to identify bugs relevant to the end user. And they have to also, it's important that a developer can fix them at all. And finally, thoroughness, that's what I was talking about. Never leave any stone unturned, being very, it's a very tedious, long process, staying focused all the time. And basically, one of the features of our office is our testers behave as end users. So there are certain automation possibilities, and we were able to automate some parts of the process, like Jira, for example, Jira entries and communication with the client. However, our testers do manual testing just to ensure the most accurate results. Okay, now please don't lose focus, because now we're going to train you a little bit on testing and on bug types. So there are two types I mentioned several times, linguistic and functional. But as for bug types, we identify like user interface bugs as separate, because those are the most common bugs for localization. So however, there is functional, there are functional issues, and functional bugs were supposed to be identified like at an earlier stage. If they did not, so they require like complex steps, like fixing the source code, for example. And there is a relatively small amount of them in localization, but it happens. Something like that is not, something that is not correct with localized build, any compatibility issues like hardware, software. One of the examples will be like install, uninstall, upgrade function in Windows. We'll show you later. User interface bugs, they do not require fixes in the source code, only in the editor. But those are basically bugs that, well, UI bugs, aesthetic quality of the program, or like any feature that is not usable. And linguistic is self-explanatory. Those are bugs reported by native speakers of target languages, and they. So this is communication between our testers, linguists, and the client. Okay, functional issue example. So uninstall functions. Let's say you have uninstalled a program, but there are some folders that weren't removed after that, and sometimes this uninstall function removes files from other programs. They just disappear from the machine, and this is a huge functional bug. Or they mess up with control panel files, for example. Now to their user interface issues. So this is what we have the most. And the examples basically include anything related to UI. And I think it's better to take a look at the examples. So truncation is the most common because when a field is okay and works for English, then translated into German, the text expands and goes beyond the field. So we have to fix the field. Untranslated text. In general, testing is kind of one of the types of in-context review, because why all this happens, for example, let's say translation was done in a CAT tool and review was done in a CAT tool. And then suddenly we go to a, let's say, website and see that everything is messed up there just because there hasn't been any in-context review done. So testing is also this type of review, but just more complex and extensive. So that's why some parts can remain untranslated. Untranslated icons. So the bold, italics, and underline were translated into Italian as negrito, italico, and whatever. But then B was kept for some reason, not N. Okay, and the next alignment. Basically, again, self-explanatory. Some parts are misaligned, and this has to be reported. Duplicate or missing hotkeys. So when you have a hotkey in the source, but then the word has been translated and just these are now different hotkeys, and sometimes they duplicate. They weren't duplicated in source, but now they're duplicated in target, and they pertain to different functions, commands. So this has to be fixed. This is a bug. And missing hotkeys. Some people don't even know that hotkeys exist. I at some point didn't know myself. And when there is a source with hotkeys, very often for some reason they're disregarded, and in target we got no hotkeys at all. Okay, layout, all kinds of like nice looking, not nicely looking UI elements that have to be, so if they're nice, that's okay, but if they're not nicely positioned, they have to be repositioned. And this shows right away. So over localization, some parts of the strings, a part of the strings has to be left in English, but so for some reason there is like those characters, and this is possibly over localization. Text formatting, any like it was bold, now it's not bold. Is that okay or not? All kinds of text formatting that doesn't show up in the target. It also has to be triaged or like assigned a severity level. Probably it's not bug at all. We don't know. Our linguists know. And corrupted characters, just for some reason, those corrupted characters show up. It must have been like a problem in coding, and now so they're there. It's quite a common bug as well. So like spaces, sorry, spaces will be next. Wrong date, time, number format, like the top part of their, like if you take a look at the bottom screenshot, the top part has been localized and it has comma, I believe, but the bottom part still has full stop. And spacing, like again in a CAT tool, strings look perfectly fine, but then something doesn't work out, and there are all kinds of like spacing issues. Finally, linguistic issues, self-explanatory spelling and grammar. So these are English examples, but normally they're in target language. Consistency and in general terminology consistency. For example, the client normally to the linguists, to linguists, if we do linguistic testing, all kinds of linguistic guidelines have to be provided, and linguistic resources such as style guides, terminology, glossaries. And here, for example, click OK, but the button says I agree. Alphabetical order is another common type of bug type because, like in English, it was Austria, so it was under A, but translated into German, it's Österreich, so it's under O, umlaut, so it has to be moved down, but it was not. So that's a bug. Okay, and we are close to the quiz. Just in general, it's all an ideal world, and software most likely will, I mean, products they do tend to get shipped with known bugs just because of many factors, and it really depends on what day of so when the release is. If it's tomorrow, then it doesn't make sense to fix it all now, because bug fixes can introduce risks of potentially even more severe bugs. So also like in this game, games are very buggy, and sometimes it can be fixed in a later release. It doesn't have to be fixed now. For example, the client can say, the company can say that it was meant to be like the girl's face was, it was meant to be so, and then so it's a cool feature. So in this case, it doesn't have potential implications like in case of medical devices, for example. So it really depends on many factors, and sometimes developers can't even fix those bugs, so it's impossible. So conclusion is, again, according to example of our office, every client is very different, and it really depends on the clients. The whole testing process actually depends on a particular client. But in general, testing is very important. It's one of the most important quality control steps at the end, and testing basically plays a key role. For example, in case there are severe bugs, it can impact everything. It can impact the profits of the company. It can impact how the end users will perceive the product, reputational damages. So all of that can be caused if there's no testing. And in general, our clients, a normal situation is when they send their devices, they think that they're bug free. But then what they find out, that there are always bugs, and then they can behave. I mean, they're really very different. But sometimes they start asking to fix the bugs even without communicating to the developers, because they just say they provide us with the files, actually the Xcode files, and linguists have to work on those lproj or whatever strings files and implement, and then they have their bug tracking system, which is in Google spreadsheet, and they just log the bugs that they have fixed, but they have already fixed them. So it really depends. And overall, like our test testing center is very new because it was opened like only how many time ago? A year ago. But we already have good experience. But definitely like we'll have more and more to talk about. But for now, yes, that's basically it. Yes, let's take a quiz. Yeah. Quiz time. I think we don't have the barcodes for those, so you can just go here. Yeah, so we don't have barcodes. You should go to that web page and click the link, and this will be SurveyMonkey quiz, and you will be like our testers in real time. We will give you 30 seconds per screenshot, and you should say, do you see a bug here, or you don't see any bug? Unfortunately, so basically the resolution is not very high, but also it is real life thing because testers sometimes have to deal with very bad quality of screenshots, poor source, and so on. So basically all the challenges. So we'll give you some time to start the quiz. So you will be comparing English to English. And on the left-hand side, you will see English and the correct version. And on the left-hand side, you will see sometimes buggy, sometimes not buggy screenshots. June, one of our most valuable assets in Moravia facility, she designed this. This is a real training for testers that testers have to take. And she basically, what she did, she took quite poor screenshots.
I think some people are having trouble getting the page to load, probably because everybody in this room on Wi-Fi went to the same link at the same time.
Oh, okay.
You may actually find that cellular data works faster. I see half the phones have it up and the other half are like refresh.
Okay, that's fine. Who can take it? But also, so what June did, she DTP'd certain bugs into the right-hand side screenshot. So I think we can start.
Are we ready to go?
Okay, ready, go.
Now the first one's particularly.
Yes, the first one is not good, but the ones later will be good. So
ones get
compare
better.
this one if you can. If you don't see, that's okay. Then next ones will be better.
Are you timing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, next.
No, unfortunately, we can't make it larger. No.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. Don't worry, there will be second quiz. Second quiz will be easier. So this we can attribute to low resolution screenshots. Your wrong answers, I mean. So here.
Mm-hmm. Tell me when.
Mm-hmm. I think everyone got it. Oops. cheat. There will be 10 in total. Okay, the results, we won't show the results this time. It's only for yourself. Okay, so let's go back and see. So you've got your scores. Go back to the first ones.
Oh, right.
Okay, so this one was the hardest one because it's really not visible here, but if you see patient log out, I don't see it myself, something. So basically, yeah, log out has dash on the left, but doesn't on the right.
That's right.
Then number 2 didn't have any bugs. Number 3 had this globe on the left, no globe on the right. No bugs. Truncation, a little bit like intermittent, truncated on the right. Line break, 2 of 2. Additional line break on the right. No bugs. No bugs. Misalignment, obviously. No bugs. Okay. Final quiz. Very easy. Everyone will get 100%, I'm sure. Next one.
Oops.
So go to the same link, and this will be the second quiz. Oh, for some reason,
What's wrong?
I don't know why, but oh, here we go.
Yeah.
It just wasn't showing here.
Okay.
And now we have identified the bugs, and you will have to categorize them. Is it linguistic or UI? You won't have functional because we can't test functionality on screenshots.
Oops.
Let's
No,
go
we
back
have to go back
yeah.
this way.
So let's do it again. Log out with dash, linguistic or UI? Give you 15 seconds. Okay, number 3, linguistic OUI. Okay, number 5, linguistic OUI.
You want to go back to 3?
No, 15 seconds. What's okay? Truncation. Okay.
This was okay.
No. So this one.
Oh, yes.
2 of 2. Linguistic OUI. Okay, finally, number 8. Sorry, number 9.
Oop.
Yeah. Linguistic OUI. Oh, people got 100%. Great job. All right. That's it. Now your questions.
I think the first question was actually kind of a comment in the chat pod there where Alfredo in Beijing wanted to add that for newbies that you sometimes have to explain complex ideas of a foreign language to a developer that might not know anything about another language. And also with limited time, a non-native speaker may need to prioritize bugs and will need a clear description to make the proper decision.
Mm-hmm.
I missed Elu's comment that she couldn't see the screenshot. Sorry. I think that was just latency. That was just network latency. That wasn't your fault. Anyway, so that's Alfredo's comment there. Any
Point taken.
We couldn't see them here either, so that's fine.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so any questions?
Peter, Roger's got you over there on the right.
So one of the things I think I've seen in testing is that a lot of clients will just create a best path through their app. Like, you know, they never think about the corner cases or the errors or the dusty side corners of their process that a user can get lost in. And that seems to be where most of the bugs are. So how do you get a client to step back and think about worst case test planning as opposed to just optimal path?
Well, I think one of the things is that when we do a first pass on the testing, we actually, as Olga had mentioned, we review the test plan pretty thoroughly with the team and they go through it. And I think a lot of times prior to even actually beginning the first pass, we find some of those. And with 2 of our clients, we've worked with them to modify the test plan so that we've got something that's far more comprehensive and thorough. But sometimes it takes several passes because I can't tell you how often we hear, oh, there aren't going to be any linguistic bugs, or this should be very, very clean, and it goes on for days. So yeah. It's a collaboration.
Yeah, and basically missing cases are exactly one of the most common failures, and I guess like also when clients see how many bugs they have already in the very like short version of the test plan, then they start rethinking, and then they get back to us because with certain clients they get back on a regular basis. So basically they have their own like schedule, but then they go back and they do the much more thorough test plans. Yes.
We have a question. Oh, sorry. So we have a question up there. How do estimate the time needed and quote for a software testing project, what criteria are
That's a great
they set on?
question. Well, I have to be honest, the very first project that we got, I actually went through the test plan myself, and went and manually went through probably the first 100 protocols to see how long it would take to go through as a tester from one step to the next. And we then extrapolated from there. And June, we were pretty close to accurate with that. So I think that the worst part of quoting for testing is that we start off with not always very accurate information, or things get changed afterwards, as in during the testing process, and the client is never really ready for how those costs can escalate once the process has started. So we try and get as complete information as possible up front. But really, I mean, I honestly believe that the most thorough way to do it is to go through a good portion of it and just click through and see how long it takes. And I think, and then work with them and say, if we're modifying, let's go back and look at everything again from a time and cost perspective, because every time there's a modification, it doesn't only cost more, but it increases the time exponentially. So yes.
I have a question about resources, most specifically about human. I
You like
understand
human resources?
I understand that there are so many native speakers of a lot of languages in Monterey. And what are the qualities that you see that they can be testers? And also, when you're recruiting some native speakers or testers from outside of Monterey, would that be a disadvantage or advantage of your lab locating in Monterey?
Is it a disadvantage for us?
Like it's comparing to San Francisco or some big cities?
Well, we look at it this way. From a location perspective, we're not that far away from the Valley or from San Francisco. As a tester, yeah, if you're coming from there, it's a trek, but we have people who do it. From a cost perspective for us, I would put the cost of our rent facility up against the Silicon Valley or San Francisco any day. So, you know, you have to sort of pick. We have an abundance of resources. We, of course, value people I mean, we value the experience that testers bring from the Bay Area and from the Valley. But some languages can be challenging, but we're managing. What qualities do we look for? Well, really, I think the most important thing is a strong attention to detail and passion for your language. I think if you have those things, the rest can be learned. And we train everybody who starts to work with us, unless there's somebody who's just been testing for years and you know, they can step right in. But because we like to have a really collaborative environment, we really take the time to see where everybody's level is and whether they have the basic ingredients.
Thank you so much.
Yes?
So I'm wondering if you do keyboard testing, localized keyboard testing.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so what are the considerations? And another question is about bidirectional language testing. So what are the common issues you run into when it comes to bidirectional language testing?
Bidirectional. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure that she said bidirectional. Okay. So we get a lot of ad hoc projects, and as for localized keyboards, we have found out that actually there are very few keyboards in the world that have been localized. There are just for some reason, there's German, for example, like Russian, and basically um, um, so we have not done like testing of keyboards per se, but we had a weird project just to compare and to compare the localized keyboards, and one of the issues, for example, in Monterey facility was that each tester has to work with a keyboard and in their native language. So we had to like order keyboard sets for like 30 languages. But like overall, I don't think like we have done like an adjunct project,
yeah,
but not like keyboard per se.
not
Yes.
keyboard specific.
Yes, not keyboard specific. And as for bidirectional languages, so what was your question about bidirectional? Okay. I think we should ask our Arabic and Hebrew.
Yeah, Smita? Yes.
So with bidirectional, sometimes there are different dialects in Arabic alone. In Arabic alone, there could be similar words, but the characters could mean different things. So there is an issue with that on the meaning of the word, the context of the word. So there are issues with where, if we're going to say where the Hamza or the Al Shadda would go. Unfortunately, I don't speak Arabic, but from my testers, they have told me that standardizing such a complex language where in one country alone there's 45 different dialects, it's not easy. So there would come your complexities. But because our linguists are very well versed in their culture and the language alone, they're starting to standardize it in a way where they can universalize those bidirectional languages. Cool.
Sorry, yes.
So you mentioned that after the training period, you typically reach 95 to 98% accuracy with your testing and the testers. I was wondering, does that continue to go up as the testers continue working there?
Absolutely.
And are you happy with, are you and your clients happy with the 98% level?
Well, we're never happy with anything that's less than perfect, but with all testing, there's a level of regression testing that occurs, and we generally, I have to say that we, through the several rounds of testing, we've ended up capturing everything that we come up with. 95%, I feel, is a good marker for somebody who's started off not being a tester and as progressing. It doesn't mean they at that point will work in teams with somebody else who supports that, because we're obviously striving for 99 or 100%. So do we always catch everything on the first round? Probably not. But do we catch everything by the second round? I think overall it's fairly high. I mean, I don't have, in fairness, I don't have proper statistics, and perhaps we haven't got the feedback from our clients to tell us that we've missed something, which is the other part of the equation, because but so far we've had, we have 3 dedicated labs, so they're happy with the work we're doing.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, and I also should add that, for example, within our training, it's really not about the amount of bugs, because it is relatively small, but this is about staying focused to find those bugs, because over our exercises, we, like in the very first one, we have introduced, let's say we've had a document and we've introduced, let's say 50 bugs on 5 pages. However, by the end of the cycle, with several linguistic exercises, we have introduced 3 bugs within 15 pages, and this was timed. So the idea is to, so it's with a relatively small amount of like bugs on the per content unit, to really like not lose focus, and they got their feedback. So because three bugs, one bug missed, it's already like
Very high percentage.
yeah, 66% only. So
Yeah.
so and also what matters is knowing what types of bugs exist at all, because like if in case of spelling, it's obvious. However, not for everyone though, but however, like in case of hotkeys, when you don't know that hotkeys exist at all, you don't see it. You don't see there's a bug there. So it was also they had to familiarize themselves with all the types of potential bugs that exist, and then they started seeing them.
Olga beat them otherwise.
Hi.
Hi.
I was just wondering if you have come to a protocol or a case in which you had to trigger something that only can be triggered by in-country. You has to be in-country. It could be currency or just some other scenarios that have to be tested. And if you have in-country testers as well that can help with those scenarios.
Well, certainly within the resources of our company, we do. We haven't had, yes, go ahead. Oh, is my microphone not on?
It's okay.
Oh, it's on.
Actually,
Go ahead, Jude.
So actually for the project, we talked about that the app for the taxi service.
Oh, yes.
So we want to test if it is functioning well in Hong Kong, in China, and in the Bay Area for the Chinese language. So we have the remote testers working on that remotely at the same time with our testers here in Monterey. And actually, the testers from Monterey and from San Francisco are having different user experience due to their, I don't know, the design of their app or something. So basically, we're having multiple testers working at the same time for that.
I didn't even remember that. Thank you, June. Yes.
Thank you for the wonderful talk. I have 2 questions. One is, I might be mistaken, but there are testers on, like, in the company on site, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Okay, so my question is, what's the advantages and rationale behind having it in Moravia as a test lab instead of sending the testers to the company to work on site?
That's a good. Well, I think that some clients have preferred having, don't necessarily want to accommodate all the testers coming, and the expenses is considerably higher to bring a tester on site than it is if we have all the testers in one facility. So there's that kind of advantage as well. And our location, of course, is our key, because being that we're serving primarily clients up and down the coast, it isn't such a great distance. So they can actually, we work very collaboratively with them, and they don't really mind coming to Monterey.
Yes, and they're staying in the same test labs with the testers, and basically can guide the process as if it were on site in the company, but the cost is different. So,
thank you.
I just wanted to mention, but I did put up some jobs where Moravia does send people to companies. I can't imagine what company they'd be doing music testing at in Cupertino, but Culver City and all that. So anyway, over here now.
Yeah, so going back to the subject of keyboards, since I'm a keyboard person, I wondered, you mentioned that at one time you bought like 30 different kinds of keyboards to accommodate your testers, and I wonder, have you ever run into a big roadblock because a keyboard wasn't able to produce a certain symbol? And if so, do you feel like, could you quantify the amount of time lost from that type of incident?
Yeah, that's a good question because we actually, yeah, I didn't tell it right. We didn't order keyboards per se. We ordered stickers. Yes. So they just put those stickers, and I guess yes, there's functionality definitely that was missing. Absolutely. However, like our process is very streamlined in terms of when they work in the test lab, it's not really that they work. I mean, they have their machines, and of course, but in general, we have like dedicated project managers who even like sometimes we had to establish a process when the testers themselves didn't even log bugs into Jira, but they would rather like pass it to the project manager, and the project manager would do it for them. So it really depends on many factors, like because clients like schedules are very tight. So like we work with what we have basically, and
The truth is that we've got a client now who's working in 100 who wants to localize into 100 languages, and the testing for that is going to be very challenging. And I think that might be a question we'll be able to answer better for you in about a year.
yeah. Yeah, because there are many other cost implications, like lots of them. Like this is of course an important one, but like there are others.
So not just keyboards, but I mean, there's obviously the whole hardware suite that you have, and there's writing down the equipment that you have, and if you're trying to do a high performance first-person shooter game, that's going to have a totally different test rig than if you're doing a kind of a utility mobile app, right?
Absolutely.
So when is the burden upon your corporation to provide the hardware? When do you push back on the client and say you might have to provide some devices for us for this testing?
Well, again, we're a fairly new lab. Our criteria there has been the volume of work. So if a client has ongoing dedicated testing, we are more than happy to make the investment in the hardware. If the client comes in every 2 or 3 months and has very specific or unique, and it's very specific or unique, then we would ask that they provide the equipment, which is what one of our clients has done. On the other hand, it really is, it's for us, the choice, I think, is really based on what kind of relationship we're going to have with them. I mean, we are always willing as a company to make the investment in our clients. So I guess probably if we had to buy mainframes or something, that might change, but
So the localization testing is quite repetitive and it can be boring sometimes. So is there any automation or tools that you are using to help you with testing or streamlining the testing?
not at this point. Because again, the kinds of projects we have been getting have been very end user focused. We're not automating that process with any tools. I think if we were doing more hardcore functional testing, we'd be looking at more tools, automation tools.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I had a question, but I think you kind of answered it. You said that you might have a project that has 100 languages.
Yes.
Right. How many languages do you staff full time?
Full time, we staff full time about 15 languages.
Okay.
Yeah. The
So
rest, and everybody is a part-time employee. But I mean, there's obviously languages that we do regular work in, and languages that are not as frequent. And so
my question was that, like, when you come to these very exotic
Well, the
application.
100 language. This is why we have our recruiter here. It's that's going to be challenging, and I'm not at all sure that we're going to be able to actually produce 100 people, 100 languages on site at any given time. So those are challenges I'm still looking forward to.
Yeah, but we have all kinds of basically those languages, like I mentioned, they can do like less common languages, they can do functional testing, and they will be present in the lab exactly the same amount of time and paid for the same amount of time as linguistic, those who do particular linguistic testing. And we also have all kinds of ad hoc projects that are related to testing, software testing, but that include DTP. We do like some project management, like side project management, and we're trying to involve our resources as much as possible, even if we don't have their linguistic work right now for them. They still have like there's a lot of
we try to
lots
give.
of things to do.
I think we give. I think what Olga is saying is that we try to engage the linguists that we have, and we know we're going to need on the short term and longer term, by involving them in some of the projects that might come our way that don't necessarily require their language set. So
Yes.
we are building a core group that way.
Yes, and we have given training not only on testing, because testing is the core. However, we have given training on DTP, on project management, on localization engineering, and some people, especially like Miss graduates, like June, for example, she's been doing DTP. She has been doing all kinds of like even localization engineering, more technical things. So yeah.
Hi.
Yes.
So when your testers log bugs into Jira or any other kind of bug tracking systems, I would imagine that some issues might happen in multiple languages, for example, those UI bugs. So I'm wondering if you have any filters or any kind of post-processing work for those repetitive issues.
I can answer that question.
Gotcha.
So in that medical device testing project, we have like 24 languages happening at the same time for testing. And there are certain kind of, as you said, there are certain kind of global bugs that are happening in every language. So basically we have a query moderator or issue moderator to like, to keep an eye on the bugs that is already in the system. And if there are like 2 to 3 languages having shared issues in the system, basically they're gonna tag that Jira bug or just flag it to me, to the test lead or the other language lead, to just merge these bugs into a global bug, to like for the convenience for the client, for the client engineer to fix it. Thank you.
I also asked her to look at this question up here.
Yeah, I just read it out. How do you test sorting order in languages that are not letter-based, typically Chinese, Japanese, and Korean? Honestly, we haven't run into this kind of issues yet, but I think it's more of an internationalization issue than a localization testing issue, because for those companies that are used to localizing into Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and other languages that are not letter-based, they should have already have that idea that they should keep an eye on this before they ever translate this content. So I think for testing, it's more from an end user's point of view. So our testers would definitely keep that in mind too. So it's just kind of a process issue. So if we notice that, we're going to flag that with the client. They might need to figure that out, outsource. Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question. Merle. Merle gets the last word.
I have a question on style. You mentioned, for example, the linguistic things could be things like spelling, but also things like capitalization. So if to take whether it was a menu title or a button or something like this, I'm sure you've seen inconsistencies. The two buttons, one will have title style and one will have sentence style. And presumably people want them to be done the same way. Then the question becomes which way. How do you coordinate style issues? Do you have your own style manual for different languages, or do you request style specifications in 20 areas of concern, or how do you coordinate customizing or imposing style requirements as part of your linguistic quality testing?
Well, we would refer back to the client first, because there's a lot of in-country review that generally comes, and if there's been previously localized versions, then we would refer to that and follow that. But if we would find something that was not following consistently a particular pattern, we flag it. And if the client didn't have a preference, which is very rare, but if the client didn't, then we would trust our linguists to make the call as to what really works best in the language.
Okay, Merle. Okay, well, thank you very much. You
Thank
taught
you.
us a lot.